Hey everyone, Donnie here and welcome back. If you're working through North Carolina Post License 301, you're in the right place. In today's lesson, we are focusing exclusively on Section 5, working with buyers. This section is heavily tested and several questions from the exam center around buyer agency, disclosure, oral agency, debt, ratios, and qualifying buyers. Be sure to just subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any future Post 301 videos. And don't forget to download the companion worksheet from the description below so you can follow right along. Let's jump in. Here's a quick overview. Section 5 focuses on agency disclosure with two buyers, working as seller subagent, type of buyer agency, the working with real estate agents brochure, or we tend to call it WWREA, buyer's objections, exclusive buyer agency agreements, identifying buyers' needs and wants, qualifying buyers, debt ratios, and loan qualifications. These are all particularly topics you'll use every day in real estate. So agency disclosure to buyers. One of the biggest test areas is understanding when agency disclosure occurs. Remember, first, substantial contact. We must provide and review the working with real estate agents disclosure brochure when the buyer begins discussing wants and needs. They provide us with confidential information and the conversation starts looking like an agency relationship. And so a common exam question asks, when must a WWREA brochure be reviewed with a buyer? The answer is at first substantial contact. Not when writing an offer, not after showing homes, not after they become a client, but at first substantial contact. Oral buyer agency. North Carolina allows oral buyer agency, and that may surprise many people. You can begin representing a buyer orally, but remember, before presenting the first offer, the relationship must be reduced to writing. The agreement must be signed before submitting an offer. This is a common test question. There is a thing called seller subagency. Sometimes a broker works with a buyer but actually representing the seller. This is called a seller subagency. In this situation, the broker owns fiduciary duties to the seller. The buyer is not the broker's client, and the buyer must receive written disclosures explaining the relationship. Remember, always disclose your status in writing. There are different types of buyer agencies. And so the several ways a broker may represent a buyer is exclusive buyer agency. This provides the strongest protection and creates a fiduciary relationship between the agent and the buyer. Non-exclusive buyer agency allows the buyer to work with multiple brokers. Oral buyer agency allowed temporarily, but must be put into writing before an offer. And then there's dual agency. That occurs when the same firm represents both the buyer and the seller. Both parties must consent to that in writing. And remember, dual agency limits advocacy because the broker cannot favor one side or the other. Exclusive buyer agency agreement. This agreement creates the agency relationship. It establishes duties that are owed to the buyer. Compensation provisions on how that agent gets paid, how long that agreement lasts, the duration of the agreement, and then also dual agency authorization. So an exam tip here, an exclusive buyer agency agreement should be in writing and signed before presenting offers. Understanding buyers' needs and wants. A good buyer agent or consultant helps determine the needs of the buyer. The buyer must-haves such as school districts or number of bedrooms or price range or commute time. The buyer's wants, things that they would like to have or need to have: a pool, a bonus room, furnished basement, large yard. Knowing the difference will save time and also help avoid frustration. Now, qualifying buyers is important. One of our jobs is to help buyers determining what they can realistically afford. Important questions would include, have you spoken with a lender, or are you pre-approved? How much down payment do you have? And what monthly payment are you comfortable with? Pre-approval should always happen before showing homes whenever possible. And remember, pre-qualification and pre-approval are not the same thing. Pre-approval carries much more weight. Now, here's another test area, and that is debt ratios. Lenders look at two types of ratios. The front-end ratio, that's the housing expense, divided by gross monthly income. That includes the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, also called PITI. Then there's the back-end ratio, total monthly debt divided by gross monthly income. This includes the PITI, but also car payments, student loans, credit cards, and other recurring debt. And the back-end ratio is always larger because it includes everything. So when solving ratio questions on the exam, find the month grossly income, then multiply the ratio percentage, and then compare the housing expense and total debt. Take your time. Work step by step. So for example, a borrower is applying for a conventional mortgage of $156,000. The monthly PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance payments, will be $1,300. In addition, the borrower has an HOA dues of $50 per month, a car payment of $285 per month, and other recurring monthly obligations totaling $300 per month. If the lender uses 28-36 qualifying ratio, what is the minimum gross monthly income the borrower must borrow in order to qualify for the loan? Step 1, you add the monthly housing payment. So you take the monthly PITI, $1,300, and the HOA fee of $50. Total housing expense is $1,350. Step 2, the front end ratio. That's $1,350 divided by 28%. That gives us $4,821.43. Now next, we add the total of monthly debt. The PITI, $1,300. HOA, $50. Car payment, $285. And then other recurring monthly debt, that's $300. So that gives us a total debt of $1,935 of monthly debt. Now, for the back-end ratio, we take that $1,935, divide that by 36%. That gives us $5,375. So the answer is $5,375. The borrower must verify at least $5,375 per month in gross monthly income because the higher required income controls. So, common exam reminders. Remember these test points. WWREA is reviewed at first substantial contact. Oral buyer agency is allowed, but must become written before presenting an offer. Seller subagents represent the seller, not the buyer. Dual agency requires written consent of all parties. Dual agency requires written consent of all parties. Remember that. Exclusive buyer agency agreements establishes fiduciary duties. Buyers should be pre-approved before beginning serious home searches. Front-end ratios focuses on housing expense, and back-end ratios focuses on reoccurring debt. Final thought here. Section 5 is all about helping buyers through the process of staying compliant with North Carolina law. Great buyer agents communicate well. They disclose agency properly, qualify buyers early, and understand financing basics. Master these concepts and you'll not only pass 301, but you'll become a great buyer agent with real-world understanding. Thank you for watching. If this video helped you, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel and share it with another 301 student. Also, don't forget to download the free worksheet in the description below so that you can review these concepts and prepare for the final exam. I'll see you in the next post 301 video, and remember, I am always here to help you from licensing to close.